Welcome to everyone that is joining us today. We are thrilled to have you here to learn more about one of our Spotlight schools. I am Ann Nielsen. I'm the Associate Director in the Center for Advanced Studies in Global Education within the college. At this time, I would like to introduce Spark School at Kyrene de las Manitas in the Kyrene School District. Today we have Superintendent of the Kyrene School District, Ms. Laura Tenyas, the principal at Kyrene de las Manitas, Dr. Sarah Collins, teacher executive designer at Spark School, Mary Brown, and first year teacher Zoe Glover to share with us more about the work they've been doing at Spark School. And Superintendent Tenyas, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Laura Tenyas, the superintendent of the Kyrene School District. I am pleased to be here with you today to introduce how our school district is implementing a next education workforce model in one of our schools and how we began the process toward a model that not only empowers teachers and provides deeper and more personalized learning experiences for our students. In 2019, the Kyrene School District launched a new program that reimagines the standard classroom structure by combining innovative practices and learning environments, methods, and staffing in order to keep our commitment to provide engaging, challenging educational environments which promote and inspire passion for learning, leading, and achieving. This prototype school within a school was developed during a year-long design process collaboratively led by the Kyrene School District and ASU's Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College design initiatives. This model is the culmination of 2 years of effort that involved more than 100 Kyrene stakeholders participating in a design process facilitated by ASU's Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. Community input and participation has been and continues to be an important part of the process and has continued to influence the program's design. All of our efforts led us to the creation of Spark School at Manitas. The Spark School's name, chosen by students in the first year prototype, is an acronym for the design principles it embodies: student-led, project-based, achieving, real-world knowledge. Before you hear from members of our Spark team, I would like to share with you one of the whys behind Kyrene's engagement in the process to reimagine teaching and learning. The program model addresses multiple findings and recommendations of our district-wide curriculum audit that led to the creation of our district's Strategic Plan 2022. The Spark program addresses goal number 1 of our strategic plan, high-performing students. This goal states that Kyrene will prepare all students to achieve their full potential in school and life by providing a dynamic learning environment that maximizes student growth and performance. One of our key strategies to reach this goal is to enhance the district portfolio of competitive options to offer innovative programs that meet the needs and interests of all students, which you will soon hear how Spark does just that. Another component of our strategic plan is our second goal, high quality talent. We are very proud that the staffing model for Spark works toward our goal to establish an effective organizational design with linkage to desired student outcomes and a culture of high performance. You will also hear more about the staffing model from the Spark team. In closing, I want to thank ASU's Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College for their collaboration and support of our Spark teaching and learning model, and for the invitation to be able to spotlight Spark School at this convening today. In Kyrene, we believe that this is just the beginning of our work toward deploying teams of educators in non-traditional ways and engaging students in dynamic learning environments that promote academic excellence. I will now turn it over to our teacher executive designer, Mary Brown, and one of our Spark educators, Zoe Glover.
Thank you. I'm going to apologize ahead of time to turn off the camera. My internet's struggling to hang with me. As Ms. Tenyas mentioned, over the course of the year, with reimagining what teaching and learning would look like. From that work, 2 goals emerged. One was to address teaching as a profession, where we to create a solution around the concerns about less people entering the field, less people staying in the field, where in Arizona, we have about a quarter of our classrooms without a certified teacher. The second goal is around student learning, where we wanted to create an environment where students were excited about learning and learning was tailored to them, their needs, but also their passions and their interests. In response to these two goals, we chose to use a team model for instruction and a commitment to deeper and more personalized learning. At Spark, we have 5 design principles. They serve as anchors and more or less a checks and balances system when we as a team are considering adding something to our program or changing something. They were given to us by the design team, but they're broad ideas and allow for us as educators to define what they really looked like in practice. Over the last 2 years, we have expanded these ideas to include things like project learning, an emphasis on mindfulness and social emotional learning, personalized learning opportunities for all students, a system where autonomy and agency is fostered, and flexible space groupings of students over multi-grade levels. Our core team is built with experienced teachers, teachers who are newer to the profession, and teach candidates. This year, we have 1.5 teacher executive designers, 2 certified teachers, and 1 teacher candidate. As a team, we surround our learners. This year, our learners are 115 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. We all own all the kids. Because we have a multi-age environment, we keep our learners for multiple years. The person who leads our team at ARC is the teacher executive designer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that role because we had a lot about it. It's a leadership role that was created specifically for this prototype. The teacher executive designer's role is to support the team in creating learning experiences that align with those goals and the principles. In addition to teaching, they provide coaching and mentorship to all the teaching staff, as well as acting as administrator with students and families in that cohort. By creating a staff with varied experience, we are supporting our newer teachers to have some safety nets in place, while also creating opportunities for leadership roles to our more experienced and most effective teachers without removing them from the classroom. The selection of individuals on our team is so important. I might argue that it is one of the most important things. Everyone on our team is committed to the goals and approaches that we use at Spark. They choose to be on our team knowing that it is a deep level of commitment. All of our teachers believe in the changes that we're making around teaching and learning. They all possess the ability to pivot and change because flexibility is essential. However, we all bring very different strengths and passions to the table that complement what the other teachers bring. This helps to create a more well-rounded experience for our students. For example, some of our teachers really carry the technology piece. They tend to lead the team in finding new ways to incorporate technology in innovative ways. Other teachers have a deep understanding of backward planning and project-based learning. We have members of our team who really manage the coordination of bringing in expert connectors into the classroom, and others who are responsible for the heavy pieces of communication with families. We also have selected teachers who feel very passionately about teaching a particular subject. Given that we teach multi-age students, there are a lot of standards that we are responsible to know. Having teachers deeply focus on 1 or 2 content areas gives them the time and the space to understand the progression of those standards over time, and has offered us as teachers more confidence in pushing our kids beyond those standards because of that deep knowledge. Our staffing model allows for us to hire some additional staff like instructional assistants, while also reaching out to the community to pull in expert connectors to bring in their knowledge and expertise into the classroom based on whatever unit that we are studying or tasks that students are working with. In the past, this has looked like engineers, attorneys, artists, scientists, meditation coaches, and many more. It has been amazing working as a whole team. The emotional support that is provided, the relationships that are developed, and the trust and confidence that we have in each other is something I honestly never thought I would experience in education. In thinking about addressing our second goal around student engagement, we have chosen a more hands-on approach. We use inquiry and project-based learning as a framework. Over the course of a quarter, students deeply explore a large topic, something that is connected both to the standards that are required, but also to their world. We explore the topic over all content areas, addressing and teaching standards through exploration and curiosity. In ELA, students are always reading an anchor text that ties back to the topic. In science and social studies, they're exploring informational text and they're conducting research. They use that research in writing to complete writing tasks with the different writing types. In math, they're completing sequential lessons that build the necessary skills for their level. Over the course of those 9 weeks, they're taking all of that content learning and building some sort of a solution that ties back to that real problem. These projects and solutions are ways for our students to demonstrate their learning in meaningful ways, allow us to assess learning beyond just a paper-based test. Students have chosen things like the production of podcast episodes, PSA videos, presentations, and the building of websites, among many others.
For example, during one quarter last year, our students worked around the driving question, what is the human impact on the environment and animals, and how can we bring both awareness and solutions to the public? Students read the anchor text, The One and Only Ivan, which became a beloved story for them. This novel built a level of empathy around the topic while students worked on literature standards. They used articles and informational text from Newsella at their level to research any animal they wanted to explore that was labeled endangered. The knowledge first developed into a 5-paragraph essay, then it translated into an opinion piece on what should be done to protect their animal. They were guided by policy writers to get their opinion piece into the format of a bill, and they later presented them orally in front of one of Arizona's state senators, Sean Bowie, who signed off on them. Students took the math skills they had been learning and developed a website that included a blueprint for an animal sanctuary, based on certain criteria, while also following a clear budget. During this activity, students consulted with a construction engineer to make sure that they were on the right track. At some point in the quarter, a few students' curiosity around organizations such as SeaWorld spread, and they asked to learn more about them. This interest took the learning into a slightly different direction than what we had planned as teachers. The different opinions on whether these organizations were more helpful or harmful got the kids debating. We offered them the opportunity to participate in a mock trial if they were committed to do the prep work that it would take. Students had access to a real attorney who donated his time, answered questions, and guided them when needed. This one activity, which was 100% student-led, allowed for kids to practice some incredible skills: research, developing an informed opinion, collaborating with their team, arguing respectfully, and when disappointed, handling it with grace and reflection. We had students who left the mock trial experience saying, I am going to be an attorney one day. What we have found from this type of learning is that kids are deeply invested in exploring topics. They are eager to gain more knowledge, and everything feels purposeful when they are creating solutions.
Our learning studio is open and flexible. Content learning is happening in various parts of the space. Students have a place to be based on their own individual schedule. We aim to get kids learning and interacting with as many students as possible, so we do not teach in grade level cohorts, but instead we differentiate the learning during the sessions to meet the needs of all of our learners. There are some times during the day when students will move in the space more based on need or interest, like mindfulness and Genius Hour. One unique aspect of our learning is the 25-minute block of time that is dedicated to mindfulness in the afternoon. We give students options of what this looks like for them. It could be meditation, yoga, silent reading, journaling, maybe drawing, where all the mindfulness options are facilitated by an adult, either a teacher or an expert connector who has come in to donate their time. In the beginning of the year, Students were selecting all different mindfulness choices and dabbling, but by about November, we found that kids had mostly found their thing and consistently selected that option. Furthermore, we were seeing kids use these skills that they had gained during mindfulness throughout other parts of the day when they might need a reset or a moment to decompress, which ultimately was the goal. It is important to us as teachers carrying out such an incredible vision to make sure that we are on the right track, that the approaches that we have selected are moving us towards our goals. We have a team of people, both at ASU and within the district, who regularly are observing, conducting interviews and surveys, and parent focus groups to provide feedback to us throughout the entire year. Just like we expect from our students, we want to be responsive to that feedback. We are modifying and iterating to be better in real time. We don't wait till the next year or the next quarter if we know a better way.
Before passing it off to Dr. Collins, our school principal, who will share about expansion, I feel compelled to share how Spark has impacted my teaching journey. I've had the amazing opportunity to be in Spark for the last 2 years. I started my journey in education as a student teacher in the Spark program with the original piloting team of teachers last year. This year, I'm a first-year teacher and acting as the ELA teacher on our team. In terms of teacher education, there are an abundance of reasons why learning to teach in Spark sets you up to be a stronger teacher. The flexibility of the space and the model gives student teachers the opportunity to lead groups with students on a smaller scale before working with them on a larger scale. Additionally, with the teaming model, student teachers have support from 3 amazing teachers and are able to get on-the-spot feedback on their teaching practices. By designing curriculum to meet the needs of the students that are directly in front of you in the classroom, both new and student teachers are getting the opportunity to learn how to design curriculum and backwards plan in order to create a more equitable classroom. After reflecting on my growth over the last 1.5 years, I've decided to conduct my master's research on the level of support student teachers are receiving in their placement and how that impacts their confidence as a new teacher. I have seen a tremendous amount of growth both in myself and the other new teachers because of the support that we have gotten in the Spark program. In reflecting on this goal around creating new pathways and having innovative staffing structures, I personally can see a long career for me in Spark where I have opportunities for leadership, personal and professional growth, mentoring, and coaching.
I want to thank Zoe and Mary. Good morning. I'm the principal of Kyrene de las Manitas, which I'm proud to say includes Spark School at Manitas. Mary and Zoe shared with you how the team has worked toward the program goals and how they utilize the design principles that they shared with you. Their new way of teaching and learning, and we say doing school, has greatly impacted students and the teachers in the program. And you just heard that from Zoe's reflection. If you heard Mary's keynote yesterday, you've heard from some of our families about how they're responding to this style of learning for their children. And at the beginning of this school year, Mary and her team began getting questions from parents about their 5th grade children staying in Spark for 6th grade instead of heading over to one of our Kyrene middle schools. We're a K-5 and then a 6 through 8 middle school model in Kyrene. So we surveyed our 5th grade parents to see if there was widespread interest or just an isolated request for expansion into 6th grade. 95% of the 74 families who responded to the survey about a middle school option said yes, they want to see Kyrene offer a 6-8 model like Spark for their child. The other 5% said they were unsure. Not one parent responding said they wanted a traditional middle school environment for their child. The results were loud and clear that we not only need to think about expansion on our campus in the coming years to other grade levels, but expanding the pre-K through 5 model of our school into 6th grade for these learners and their families. We are fortunate that our governing board approved the expansion of Spark at Manitas to all 3rd through 5th graders and to adding 6th grade for the 21-22 school year. Our kindergarten through 2nd grade teams will be dabbling in these design principles next school year, although not officially a part of the Spark model. Our long-term goals include folding our kindergarten through 2nd grade learners in the 22-23 school year into Spark, working towards a preschool signature Spark program, and eventually implementing the Spark model school-wide as hopefully a preschool through 8th grade campus, the first of its kind in Kyrene. And as most of you on this, I'm assuming that most of you on this Zoom with us are well aware, anytime a system-wide change is attempted in public education, there are hurdles to cross, minds to expand, traditions have to be forfeited, and hearts need to be changed. If it was an easy thing to do, we would see current education practices keeping up with modern times in a much more rapid fashion than we do. Our team knows that doing what is right for teaching and learning isn't always easy, and doing what is easy in education isn't always the right thing to do. We may not have it all figured out yet in Spark, but we're excited about the journey that we're on. And we thank you for joining this session and spending time with us this morning to learn about what we're doing in Tempe, Arizona, over here in the Kyrene School District at Kyrene de las Manitas. I see some questions already in the chat. We welcome any questions you have about our process, our program, and the people here who make it all happen. So thank you. And Anne, I'll send it back over to you.
I'll go through the questions as they have come up in the chat, and please, of course, add more questions as they come up through the discussion. But the first question from Chris says, these innovations look great, but also seem resource intensive. How did you fund this, and how applicable is this to less resourced schools and districts?
I'm going to ask Laura to take this one, our superintendent.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, team. Great job highlighting Spark today. So when we set out to, in the planning stages of this, of course, this was a big conversation with our board around resources and, was this going to take resources away from other schools? So I'm going to talk first just about our staffing model. Our staffing model is actually built on a cost-neutral model. So for example, if you had 120 students and split out between 4 classrooms with 4 certified teachers, what we've done is say, we're only going to use 3 certified teachers. And the goal is to typically your teacher executive designer is at a higher level and gets a pretty good stipend because they're also supporting the other teachers. And so that's a really experienced teacher. And then we sort of get a middle of the road experienced teacher, if you will, somebody that's been around a little while. And then we try to get a novice teacher in there as well. So you can kind of see that spreads out where you might fall on the salary schedule. But that 4th teacher that we didn't fill, that salary is now used to give stipends to our teacher candidates. It gives stipends to if you need extra support in the classroom. It helps pay for any of the stipends that we use. And so that becomes a cost neutral model. And in some cases, it actually, what we learned after the first year is it became a cost savings model because we no longer need to hire substitutes in this program. And that has been way less disruptive for children's learning and has been a cost savings on the budget. So when it comes to the staffing, it's either neutral or savings. When it comes to the resources, we are still kind of figuring out exactly what does it take. As far as the resources in the classroom, that also has proven to be fairly cost neutral. We are piloting some things, so we don't have a final, this is what it will be, and determining what we want to keep and not keep. The biggest expense has been on the front end in some of our one-time cost. And that would be such things as the construction that it took to expand. But the furniture cost is relatively small compared to what it would cost to furnish 6 classrooms. We take that budget and then we apply it to, now we're going to buy furniture for this one big learning space. And that has been very minimal. I would say about $5,000 was the difference. And that was because of the maker space. We have learned in the prototype of what resources can now be shared as we expand. And so that has been a savings. So I would say the biggest cost has really been the construction and a little bit of the technology on the front end. And we are currently in the process of seeking grant funding for some of that as well, because we don't have a lot of resources in the district either, just like every other district. And so we are looking at some grant funding as we expand. But we've also had a real conversation in our district around this being a strategic priority, and that if this is what's really important and this is the way that learning should look like in the future, then this is a well thought out investment. And so we're looking at maybe we need to reshift how we've been spending our budget as we move forward.
Thank you. I have another question that's slightly related that just popped up. How have you planned for teachers to grow into or rotate through different roles? You spoke of experienced, mid-career, and more novice teachers making an ideal team. What if the novice teacher shows great leadership ability and is ready to jump to a teacher leader role? Or if mid-career teachers are ready to grow, but all the leadership positions are filled?
Do you want me to go ahead and take that one? Is that okay? Okay. So it is a prototype, right? So we're in year 2. Last year was year 1, and we all know what happened last year, right? So 3/4 of the way into our school year, everything stopped. So the planning is in real time, right? Going along, and I'm sorry, I got distracted for a second. I thought I was on mute. We are planning for the future, and these are our hopes for the model of staffing, but you're absolutely correct. We could run into any of these circumstances, and it's going to be just like any other school, grade level team, or district resources and availability for people to move into leadership roles, right? We're not going to be able just to create them. They have to be available. So this is the hope of the design. This is the hope of the staffing design and model, but we're going to have to cross that bridge when we get there. Because just like in any other school or situation, what if a team all of a sudden a spouse gets transferred and the TED leaves and the novice teacher decides to move to Teach for America, whatever, things happen in life where a team could be dissolved when the intention was to be together all the way through for these children, but life happens. So I don't have a solid answer for you, but it's going to be one of those situations where we're going to have to look at the position that we're in, the people that we have in the teaming, who's moving on, the staffing that the district gives us for that year, how we want to utilize the staffing. Just as Superintendent Tenya said, we may decide that we need 2 student teachers that year, or 3 student teachers, or 4 student teachers. And we may not have the novice teacher that year because we ended up having 2 more veteran teachers. So that's we're just gonna have to see how that plays out. So I hope that answered your question a little bit. It's really one that we haven't run into yet. So when we present in a year or 2 and this has happened, we'll have a much more solid answer for that. I would like to go back. And is it okay if I go to Bill's question?
Sure, go ahead.
And the reason is because I actually have demographic data that I could show, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. So Bill asked about our school district and how the demographics compare to the rest of our district. And we have that for you. So.
And Sarah, if I can jump in on that too, from the design team, before we even handed this off to Sarah, Mary, and team, we were very intentional about setting up structures that Spark would closely represent the district's demographics. Not necessarily the school that it was at, although it does tend to also, Manitas tends to reflect most of our district demographics, but we were very intentional about setting up structures and the first round of enrollment in ensuring that we did our best to reflect our district demographics as much as possible.
And as you can see here, the darker bars to the left of the data are Spark students. And then the outer circles are Spark students.
And I think the other part of this conversation, Sarah, that I also maybe saw in the questions is, and you'll see it in that FAR graph that Sarah's pointing to, this is obviously an open enrollment school, just like any other school in the state. The first year that we opened, we actually got enrollment. We have 25 schools in the district, and Spark was representative of every one of our 25 schools. A student, at least from one student from every school, had chosen to move over, and in some cases multiple students. But so we saw within our own district some students move, but we also received quite a bit of out of district enrollment as well.
Yeah, so we actually have students who live quite far away, actually. This year it's working out okay because they've chosen to keep their students online, but they've open enrolled from quite a few places around the valley. So we'll have to see how that works next year and actually getting them to campus. But you can see here the Spark resident transfer and non-resident transfer, very, very closely aligned to the school itself and to Kyrene. So I just wanted to show that because we already had it available because we shared it with our school board members a while back. So I'll stop.
That's great. Thank you. If I can offer a quick follow-up to that, in order to maintain that kind of level of equity across or comparison to the district at large, I assume you had to be selective in who applied and who was selected to the school, right? So I wonder if you have that similar kind of demographics for students that were turned down to give a picture of like who was actually opting in.
We didn't actually end up needing to turn anyone down. It worked out almost just perfect. We have a few that had chosen to come and then opted not to at the last minute, maybe for transportation reasons. There were some issues, but at this time we have not faced that hurdle. But we are starting to put some structures in place because we do know that that could happen at some point. We were prepared for a lottery type system, and we were very clear how that would lay out so that the demographics would lay out this way. But again, we haven't faced that hurdle yet.
Thank you. I'd like to jump to Meg's question about collaboration time, and this might be more pertinent to Zoe and Mary and probably Dr. Collins, but how much collaboration time does this team of teachers have daily and weekly? And what kind of data do teachers collect to inform their instructional choices?
Yeah, I can weigh in on this one. So we're really fortunate because our district does allow teams to have collaboration time. At a minimum, we collaborate for, I'd say, an hour a day. And we really utilize the days that are given to us where they're just planning days for teachers. That's where we do the bulk of our backward planning for the quarter. In addition to that dedicated planning time, I will say that when you are sharing a space with teachers, there is a lot of time where teachers are talking about specific students or more general ideas that are not available to maybe the traditional teacher just because they're in their own classroom. So there are a lot of conversations all day long, in the morning, throughout the day, at lunch, about students that all contribute to supporting students. In terms of data, our students do, so in addition to the teacher more created assessment tools that we use in our classroom, which I will say are more rubric based for our students, we also do all the assessments that the district does. So we do the district-wide interims, they participate in the state assessments, and then we also, in addition to the interims for the district, we also have things like DIBELS and another math diagnostic that students take so that we can compare their growth to the more traditional setting to make sure that we're still either on track or exceeding that growth. I'm happy to let anybody else.
Do you use exit tickets with your students or any kind of end of class?
Tons of exit tickets, yes. Daily checks to just modify. We use the Google Classroom. And so I will tell you, kids are in there looking for feedback from teachers every day in every subject. And they're communicating constantly about how can I improve on this? And they're going back in. That's another real big piece is that.
Oh dear.
She froze. Well, you know what? I was actually going to piggyback off of what Mary was saying, and Zoe probably could as well.
He turns something in. It's not necessarily a done deal, where a lot of times I think.
Okay. So Mary had shared with me that students literally on the weekend are in the Google Classroom and emailing the teachers ideas and assignments. And like Mary has been in education a really long time, and she's like, I've never seen anything like this. I want to tell you the dedication of this team. I hope I can replicate it, because not only with the district provided time for collaboration and the things that Mary's sharing, they are a dedicated group of educators who are constantly working to better their practice, what they can do for children. They were doing things in the summertime on their own time. They do intervention before school on their own time. They do book clubs with the kids after school on their own time. So that's something that it's not written in a job description, but they're just so dedicated to this and to their students I just want to share and pat them on the back for that, because that's not something they're going to tell you on their own.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Moving on to Jen's question. How do you incorporate ELAD teachers and SPED teachers into the day? And maybe you could expand on how you meet the needs of students with different needs within this environment.
I can take that one. And then I think Rashida had I saw your hand raised, so we'll come to you, or if you want to put it in the chat. So this year is very different because our Kyrene mitigation strategies are such that we are not in a true Spark model of students intermixing. We have to keep them in cohorts and grade level teams when they are in person. Right now, we're in a contingency model. But right now, this year, our ELL teacher for our ELL students, she sees them virtually. And if our students are on campus that have IEPs, that teacher also, she can see them in person. Otherwise, it's virtual. Our hope moving forward is that we're already reimagining what teaching and learning looks like. We want to reimagine what supports for students looks like. We want to work toward a push in for students. The teachers and the specialists that these students need come into the learning space. They come into the learning studio to work with students. Just like any other group, any other teaching situation where you might pull a group to the side for this or that, or put these children together and for this or that, same thing. That way, when the special education teacher is going into the classroom, there's not that disconnect that I'm sure you all have experienced now, where they go to the resource room and they work on their IEP goals. And unless the teachers are collaborating very closely, which is hard to do, there's a disconnect in what they're doing in resource towards their goals and what the content is in the classroom. So we actually have a meeting with our special education team next week, and we are going to start planning for that push in for students with special needs for next school year. And we have 3 self-contained programs on our campus, and we are already talking about how we can use a inclusion model so that students in our self-contained resource program can come into the Spark Learning Studio at times that are appropriate to meet their needs, so that we have that inclusive environment for them on our campus. And Rashida?
Thanks, Sarah. I put the question in the chat, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're incorporating teacher candidates into the staffing model. I saw that I think there's 3 teacher candidates, if I read that right, that you all incorporate. And the part B to that is if there were any obstacles or challenges that you were figuring out the best way to incorporate them, if you could give us some insight into that and how you overcame them as well.
Sure. So Mary would be great to speak to this, but I think her internet's struggling a little bit. If you get back on, Mary, or let me know.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just try with my video off. Feel free to mute me if I start getting glitchy. Yes, I'm excited to talk about teacher candidates. So our teacher candidates, they do receive a small stipend to be on our team. So that's an incentive to them because of the level of commitment that this takes. They do work with us 5 days a week, and they work with students the whole calendar year. So that's a little bit different than some of the other teacher candidates. The reason why in the first year there were 3 teacher candidates versus less this year is because we only have as many teacher candidates as we have certified teachers who have experience that can support them. So that's going to change depending on the staffing model that we have in certain cohorts. I want to say that, my teacher candidates have come from ASU. They have been well prepared to start teaching in this sort of a model with project-based learning. They are eager. They have been awesome. I cannot honestly think of an obstacle because they have been so wonderful and dedicated, and just honestly it's just blown my mind at what they can do. I think that this model is great if there's room to hire. When you bring a teacher candidate in and that's their experience for teaching, just to roll them into the team if the space allows for that.
This is This is Laura, and I just want to share one obstacle that we had to think through on the planning team. And then when we got this in front of the board the first time was creating structures from the district level that allowed us to be able to offer the stipend for some student teachers in our district, but not all. So currently what we have set up, because this is cost neutral and because we take that funding from the teacher we didn't hire and we dedicate it to the program, again, as Mary, I think, and Sarah both alluded to, each cohort of children and their whole teaching team, one might have one teacher candidate, one might have three, depending on how they chose to use that funding. So we did set that up, but that's probably something we've been talking about from a district level is, do we want to expand that now, even if they're not in a Spark model? Do we want to look at expanding team opportunities for our teacher candidates and the stipends that go along with that? Because I think we found a lot of benefit in the year long, and our candidates being able to spend that time, additional time, really planning and doing some of those things. So we are talking about, does this expand outside of Spark, the stipend piece? But that was probably our biggest hurdle, was that was something that had never been done before in the district, that you would actually pay a teacher candidate. And so trying to educate everybody as to the why and get them on board with that.
I'm going to have to jump in here. Unfortunately, we're running short on time for the session, and as usual, when we have such great models and examples to look at, lots of questions have come forward. So I'd like to thank the Spark at Manitas team and Superintendent Tenyas for joining us this morning.